Good morning, early years. Today we are going to be reading Pattan's Pumpkin by Soundar and Frané Lessac. Once upon a time there was a man called Pattan. He lived with his wife Canny on the banks of a mighty river that galloped down the mountains. They tended the goats, fed the bulls, and rode with the elephants that roamed their lands. Pattan grew pepper, rice, nutmeg, and bananas. He shared his food with everyone, the animals, the birds, and the insects. One day, Pattan found an ailing plant in the valley. It had beautiful yellow flowers. "I'll plant it by my hut and look after it," he thought. The plant liked its new home. The yellow flowers smiled at the sun. "Look," Pattan called one day, "a pumpkin has started to grow." The pumpkin grew a little every day. "The goats can't reach it now," said Canny. The pumpkin had grown taller than the fence. It was fatter than the pigs. Then it grew some more. Pattan had to climb on the elephants to check the pumpkin. And it still grew bigger and bigger and bigger. "Soon it will be as tall as the mountains," said Pattan. The next day, dark clouds gathered. Rain crashed against the rocks in a fury. Pattan was afraid that the floods would wash away his hut. "We should leave the mountains tomorrow," he said. "We should take all the animals, birds, beetles, and bugs with us, and a sapling of every plant and seed of every grain." But how were they going to take all the creatures with them? Pattan couldn't sleep that night. When the pumpkin glowed like fire under a burst of lightning, he had an idea. In the morning, Pattan reached for his axe. "It's time to harvest the pumpkin," he said. Battling against the lashing rain, Pattan climbed the mountain. The birds and animals followed him. Pattan jumped on top of the pumpkin. Cutting a big hole, he dived into its orange flesh. The birds called out in fear. The goats bleated. The bison snorted. Pattan dug into the pumpkin, hollowing its insides. "Help me," he called. The goats, the bison, the birds ferried out the pumpkin flesh as fast as they could. The wind blew hard, rocking the pumpkin from side to side. But Pattan did not give up. He dug and dug until the pumpkin was hollow. At last, it was big enough for everyone. Down in the valley, Canny filled sacks with grain and seeds and herbs. Pattan loaded them onto the goats, elephants and bulls, and brought them up the mountainside. "Hurry, climb in," Pattan cried. The dark evening skies cradled the mountains in darkness. "We must leave before nightfall," said Pattan, cutting the prickly stem from the plant. Now the pumpkin was free. It rolled down the mountain and bounced into the river. The crested waters of the river carried the pumpkin along. Many a day and night must have passed. No one counted. It rained and rained and rained. Canny sang a lullaby to soothe the baby animals and birds. "While the gods of rain and thunder send us a storm, here inside the pumpkin we are safe and warm. One day we will return to our mountain peak, but in this great darkness, light is what we seek." And then, one day, the pumpkin bounced against something and stopped. Pattan climbed out into the bright and sunny day. "We've reached the plains," he called joyfully. Canny and all the creatures hurried out. The troubles of the rain were finally over. "The pumpkin has saved us," said Canny. The animals and birds basked in the sunshine. The next morning, Pattan gathered everyone together. "It's time to return home," he said. Back in the valley, they built a new house by the river. "I'm forever grateful to the pumpkin," Pattan said as he planted the single pumpkin seed he had saved. Pattan and Canny had many children, and they all made their homes in the foothills of the mountains. Even today, Pattan's descendants live in this valley, looking after their animals and growing pumpkins. They remember Pattan and Canny with reverence and love. I hope you enjoyed that story today. I will see you next time for another story. Bye.